a socialist idea. So if you like Zimbabwe, if you like Venezuela, if you like the old Soviet Union, if you like all of Africa, I live in South America. Yeah, that's great. It's a freebie. Wonderful for the play. And worse, you need the government to administer this stuff, to take the income from whoever produces the income and give it to people who've done nothing to deserve it. So I can't think of a more stupid idea that's, traveling the meme circuit at this point.
Okay, do you have any response to any of the things you heard here? Because I know.
It hurts. My head hurts. First and foremost, I'll try to take it back to the concept. If you're in the HR business and you employ people, today we have finally reached the conclusion that the most motivated individuals are those with which you deal as follows. You find out what their basic needs are, and you provide them with an income that is roughly equal to that amount. So if somebody can take care of their basic needs at 50 grand, 200 grand, whatever it is a year, if you give them that as their base salary, you can then motivate them to do even more under the appropriate behavior by giving them incentives to produce beyond that. But the fact is that behaviors are wrong if you provide somebody with nothing but piecework, for example, where they are under constant pressure to produce in order to pay for their family's basic needs. In that environment, they develop all kinds of bad characteristics. The panic provides incentive to steal, to cheat, to do all the things that we wish our workforce doesn't have. When you provide the basic needs and you give incentive above that level, you have an ideal employee who has the right motivation, who has no need to steal, has no need to take risks that are beyond what he's supposed to take, and performs the tasks to get the additional incentive beyond the basic needs. That is roughly the concept of basic universal income. And that is that every citizen, as a birthright, receives a couple of $100 grand on January 1st. Poor or rich, doesn't matter. Billionaire, you still get your couple of $100 grand. In theory, that takes care of the basic needs that you have, and you do not have to do and display behaviors that are antisocial. As you go beyond that, you can then start doing things that you really are interested in. You can be a poet, you can be a musician, you can do the things that truly motivate you. And in an era in which we are about to lose 10, 20 million jobs in the next 5 years with autonomous vehicles that happen not only in the automobile transportation area, but in the aircraft transportation, in boats, in cargo ships, in all kinds of hospitality, as well as factory automation. There is just going to be an enormous number of folks that are going to be unemployed with skills equivalent to the coal miners that we currently have, who cannot be retrained, because it's kind of hard to get them Java trained in the time frame that would be productive for them. But you now have the basic universal income, the ability to provide the training over an extended period of time so that the person can pursue whatever opportunities there. And I find it really silly that rich people tend to not like this the most. And the thing is, they should like it the most because now you have consumers armed with cash that are going to spend it, and the rich guys are going to get it anyway. And you've prevented the number one risk that our society has, and that is the 0.1% are probably going to get revolutionized out of the system when you piss off the poor people enough. And so you solve both ends of the problem. You solve the behavioral problem, the incentive problem, and you give people the liberty to go off and pursue whatever occupation they want to, earn as much additional income as you want, but pursue a happy life instead of being relegated to the coal mine, which you probably didn't want to do in the first place. So those are the sort of key components of why, and the studies that have been performed and the implementations that have been done to date, whether it's in Finland, whether it's in India, have all confirmed that this is the behavioral modification that occurs. Instead of having nothing and being in a situation where in order to survive or feed your family you got to rob 7-Elevens, you get to the point where the basic needs are taken care of, and you can pursue the kind of occupation and do the kinds of things that really motivate you.
I'm going to bring Jeff into the conversation. Jeff just walked in, Jeff Berwick, Dollar Vigilante.
The question I get is, and it's, I think Flip brings up some good points, but one of the things that, if maybe Jeff, you could talk about this, that we see already today elements of what you might call a basic income. We see the earned income credit system and the taxes. We see a lot of things that give people what they call basic income, that they might get $10,000, $12,000, and people never leave the system. They always stay in that system of what I would call a lateral movement. It's or horizontal movement. They go from one job to the other. It's the same type of jobs. How do you break that in maybe a free market enterprise? And talk a little bit about your idea in your university job.
Well, let me say you started out by saying your head hurt after hearing the common sense from Bev Casey. That might be because you have a lot of cognitive dissonance in your head and a lot of really wacky, sick ideas, actually. I want to actually just ask one question. Where does all this money come from that you're giving us?
It's the same place all money comes from. Federal Reserves print the shit out of it.
Okay, so inflation. Okay. Do you not know anything about economics? That we print up a lot of money? What happens to the money?
I'm also very much a fan of 000, Herman Cain's 999. I like the idea of absolutely no taxes being paid by anybody.
Me too.
Only have the government issue whatever money it needs every year to satisfy the needs of the obligations it has. And therefore, individuals who have cash, as opposed to Bitcoin, let's just say, but who have cash can hedge it with other currencies that they think somebody else is going to perform better. Or they can keep it and hope that, like quantitative easing, good things happen at the end of it.
Well, basic economics is when you print up a lot of money, out of nothing, it destroys the value of that money. Are you not aware of that at all?
I am, except I don't believe it.
What? Okay.
And the proof is the last 10 or 12 years, maybe 15 years. There's been a lot of money printed.
Yeah, that's just 10 or 15 years, and there's been a lot of technological progress in that time. So the main reason that we haven't seen hyperinflation yet is because it's actually squandered all of the wealth that's been created over the last 20 years. If you look at the world in the last 20 years, it's changed dramatically with the technology, with the internet, with apps and things. We have the largest hotel company in the world now, doesn't own any hotels, Airbnb. We have the largest taxi company in the world, doesn't own any taxis, it's Uber. So we're getting more of this peer-to-peer sort of economy. That, if we did not have the inflation that we've had from the Federal Reserve, which has actually been 5 to 10% per year for the last number of years, we would have had so much more wealth. It's been squandered because of inflation. But having not looked at every single instance of hyperinflation in history, it's just printing money and it turns into worthlessness very quickly. So you can't just look at the last 10 years and say that it's never, you're going to print up, like if you print up trillions and trillions of new dollars, it's going to obviously make the currency go down in value. That's just supply and demand.
I disagree.
Well, you can't say you disagree, but you have to have some.
I'll give you my numbers. All right, every hyperinflation in history has occurred because the country owed a big debt in a foreign currency that they didn't have control over. Take Germany, for example. So we're not talking about that. We're talking about printing money in order to stimulate your economy. You need to get the money out there first. You've got to have demand in order to create the supply. Suppliers are not going to produce unless they've got money, unless people are paying for it. Or, there's people with money. So here are my figures. We have a population of 323 million. Let's say you paid $1,000 to all adults per month and $500 to everyone under 18. That would come to 3.4 trillion. We already pay 1.8 trillion in, let's call this Social Security for all, basically. So we already pay in Social Security and welfare 1.8 trillion. So if you deduct that, you come out with 1.6 trillion that we're going to be adding to the system. You can easily get that back with, say, a 10% tax on, a sales tax on every transaction, and then a 4%. Let's say you do it in credit cards, or this is a debit card.
You're going to use that to add to the inflation. You're going to steal.
No, you're just basically going to trim a little.
It's
a transaction tax. It's a transaction tax.
Yeah, let's call it trimming. This is all about social engineering. The people who want this are going to decide who gets what from whom.
In
And there's a certain
120 years,
elite that's gonna decide.
AI is going to take every job. You're going to have to.
Ellen, it's a social engineering thing. I mean, this always has bad results because you've got to use coercion
It
and
does
force.
not have bad results.
You've got to use coercion and force, and that always gives you bad results. Always, always, always.
Aren't you against theft?
It's not that.
It's not that
It's trimming.
It's trimming.
Okay.
That's not-
It's a transaction tax. Okay.
A tax is theft.
If you put the money out there, agreed, you've got to pull it back in some way. How are you going to pull it back? It's if you put a transaction tax on every transaction, you don't even have to give it back to the government. You just trim it off. Like a credit card can just deduct that.
Believe the government can solve
You've
these
got
things.
velocity of 7 in a good economy. If you multiply 7 by 14%, you're going to get
Put you in
100% back.
Washington, D.C., you can sit around a table like this with all those congressmen and talk
I'm
about
telling
this.
you,
Why
it's
is the
coming
government
because
involved?
there's
Why is
really
the
no
government-
alternative. Are you
Why is
going
the
to
government
starve all
involved
those
in money
people?
at all? Have you asked yourself that question? Why is the government have anything to do with money? Why?
Well, they hardly have anything to do with the money. It's the Federal Reserve that has something to do with the money.
Right, well, that's an arm of the government.
Not really, it's owned by somebody else.
Well, yes, I know, it's 50% owned by the US government and 50% owned by some big banks, but the fact is, the excess, the earnings of the Federal Reserve is all rebated to the US government, and it's controlled by the US government. Or the two of them, one's the master, one's the dog, I don't know which is which. But it's an arm of the US government for practical
So
purposes.
just the fact that you're saying the two ways to pay for it is inflation of the currency, which
It's not inflation of the currency. When
When
supply
you
and
print
demand
money-
go up together, prices remain stable. You're assuming that you pump a lot of money out there for things that are already there. That will, of course, drive up the price. But if you put money out there, like look in the Great Depression, you had fruit rotting on the ground and workers out of work. The only thing missing was the money. If you put the money out there, the workers will pick the fruit and sell it, and there'll be somebody to buy it. So you've got to get the demand out there before you can have.
But you need to at least admit what you're saying, right? So you're saying you're printing out money, right? That's inflation. Like you can't just say, I call it something else. That's what it is. And that destroys the value of the currency.
Inflation.
Ellen,
Inflation is when you have
Would you answer the question I asked
too
you
much
before?
money creating too little goods and services. If you increase the services, goods and services, prices will remain stable. That's the factor that is left out of the conventional.
But what a crazy idea that you're going to inflate the currency, which is turning out money out of nothing, which almost every time in history has ended up with the money becoming worthless. And then you want to add to it by robbing people. This is like an insane.
So the Fed just
And
did
then
3.7 trillion in quantitative easing. Of course, it never made it into the real economy, but
Right.
it did not create inflation.
Ellen,
I mean, it should
answer-
have created hyperinflation.
Doesn't inflate inflation. You know how much money I've spent here in Aspen? $60 for my taxi here. I don't even know. I ordered room service the other night. It was $120 for a cheese plate and a glass of
You
wine.
ever heard of Uber?
I did call Uber. It was $45 as well for a 10-minute ride. Anyway, like the prices have gone, starting to go really nuts. But anyway, let's not even talk about how you want to inflate the currency and how you want to rob people. Let's talk about what the repercussions are for people who are on welfare.
We're talking about people that have no jobs and cannot get jobs because AI is going to beat them out of the market. That's the reason we need a universal basic income. It's the other alternative is let them starve. A number of economists there was a study of economists that found that in 120 years there will be no jobs. That AI will take
There'll
all
be no
the
job.
jobs.
I'll always have a
45
job for
years, they will
you.
be
I need my
better.
shoes cleaned right now. You want to clean them? I'll give you $20.
A machine can
There's a
do
job.
that. better.
Well, I prefer you do it because I want to see you actually be so productive with it.
Alan, this makes you a Luddite. You're probably unaware of the fact that when the Industrial Revolution came on, it unemployed huge numbers of people that were working in their huts on spinning machines, and now the steam-driven machines
Is
were
that
much
the
more
economy
productive.
you want to be a worker in
No.
a factory putting parts into
No, and that
a
was
conveyor belt?
200 years ago.
We
okay?
now have AI that can do all that.
I know,
So
this
let
is-
the people
Look,
do what's really productive, like Flip said.
First of all, would you answer my question? Why does the government have to be involved in money? This is a recent phenomenon, actually.
It's not. Government created our original money in the
Yes,
American colonies.
it minted
You may
gold
have-
and
you may
silver
have-
coins. That's not getting
You
involved
may
in
have missed the
money.
part where I said there'd be no taxes, nobody would have collected, no IRS, no accountants necessary to count it. All of those things, even the government would pretty much disappear and worry about nuclear weapons or something stupid like that.
I'm in favor of
Yeah,
it.
that's-
I'm sorry, I just, like, I've been sitting here and we're in a cryptocurrency conference. And I haven't heard the word cryptocurrency one time from anyone.
Well, that's because Ellen can inflate the amount of
But
Bitcoin.
here's the solution. All right, well, that's a good point. I agree with them, right? So why don't we use the masses who are by nature decentralized as nodes in a cryptocurrency mining operation for which they receive universal basic income?
You know, the thing that strikes me is you all seem to think like everyone's going to starve to death soon because of robots. As Doug was just sort of pointing out, all technological advances have improved human life to this point in history. And there's a whole idea that everyone needs a job. You know, if robots are doing everything, we'll live in Jetsons sort of society. No one even really have to do all that much.
Exactly.
So why steal from people and why destroy the currency?
How are you gonna feed them?
I thought the robots were gonna make us food. Robots are gonna farm for us, so the
Okay, well,
robots are
make
gonna
it
feed
free.
us.
That works for me. Why not? Yeah, sure, make it free. We all have free housing, we all have free food. Sure.
Well, there's certainly.
Tax the
What people
robots.
do with free stuff, they destroy it.
No, they don't. In Yugoslavia, which was the best of the socialist models, you actually, well, I heard somebody that lived there during that time, and it was actually quite idyllic. You
Try to
walk-
find someone on the street here who's homeless and say, I'm gonna give you my condo. You come back in 2 months, you look at what happened to your condo. It'll almost always just be absolutely destroyed because they have no respect for it, they didn't have to earn it. They don't have the skills already to even know how to conduct their lives. That's why they're already living on the street for the most part. So welfare destroys
It's
people.
not. It's
Have you not
because
seen
they
it?
lost their house in the housing crisis.
Inheritance is also not that great, but you shouldn't be stealing it from the government to give it to other people either. Theft is always wrong. But welfare destroys people. Once you put people on something where they know they're making income, why would they ever try to improve themselves or get better at anything?
That's not true. If you,
That's
well,
a
like,
fallacy.
Well, I know for me personally, I was on unemployment insurance when I was 18. And if I was unemployed, I just played video games, make pizza all day, every day. And if that unemployment insurance didn't run out after 1 year, I'd still be sitting there eating pizza and video games. I swear I would have been. But it turned off, and I had to go out, I had to get better, I had to learn lots, I had to find ways to add value to other people's lives. And, to take that away from people is actually another sort of heinous crime.
You could work even if you had a basic income. It's not a
But people
prohibitor.
generally don't.
That is not true. That is one of those
you want to live
false
at
laws.
$1,000.
It's what you're saying is
If you give someone $1 million a year, they're going
They're
to go
gonna
work
get
for
$1,000 a month.
steal it.
Nobody needs to
Flip.
work at McDonald's.
What is a real life example of what you're saying, which is refuting what Jeff is saying? That it's a fallacy.
The fallacy is that the studies that have been performed with universal income have shown that most, not all, but most of the individuals in the 95% have pursued careers with additional money earning activities and have felt passionately about the things that they were doing instead of being burdened by the tasks that they didn't want to do.
What are those studies? You're looking for real life examples.
I'm not arguing those studies, but I can tell you if you listen to Ted on the top TED Talks, all you got to do is dial in for any of the universal basic income studies that are there, and they're very prolific in terms of.
Why don't you go into areas where they've had welfare for generations? Is it not a really great
Okay,
place?
take England in the Middle Ages. There was something called the 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 leisure class. And these were all people who were supported. They were very wealthy. And it was their duty, and they did do art, literature, science, religion. I mean, they were the ones that did the cultural development because they had a basic income and they didn't have to worry about slaving in the fields.
Why don't you take your money and give one person basic income right now?
I do, it's my son. And he's been very productive with it. He spends all day doing this stuff, cryptography. He loves it, and he's passionate about it, and therefore I'm willing to support him.
But how about someone else? You got a little extra money, right? Why don't you support someone else? Why don't you do that?
That's all the money I got.
Yeah, nothing that extra?
I have Social Security and pension. And that's what I've been on. Thank you
I have
very
that
much.
history, you're not gonna have that much longer. Because the US dollar is gonna hyperinflate to zero pretty soon. The socialist insecurity thing. So you better get ready to follow some shoes.
I don't believe it.
You don't believe that?
I'm okay with destroying the current financial system.
Yeah, I'm done.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's very corrupt, it needs to be destroyed. Yeah, I certainly agree with you on that.
Oh, you just don't like that part.
Okay, so let's talk about that, destroying let's talk about destroying the financial
That's
system.
actually a test on everyone that has a currency.
We look around here, I just heard from someone here in the room.
Yeah, they will.
Perfect.
We're in Aspen. Obviously, as you just talked about how expensive it is here in Aspen. What's the saying here in Aspen? I just heard it. You either have 3 homes or 3 jobs. Isn't that kind of becoming now the case in a lot of places? We're now seeing, we're seeing that. We're talking about basic income. We're seeing what in Saudi Arabia, where you have an elite class that basically gets a basic income of the 100,000 plus. And what do you have below that? You have a militant class of under people that migrant workers that are spewing revolution. Isn't that the kind of thing that we're seeing when you have that huge disparity?
Well, that elite class in Saudi Arabia, they're very productive people. Constantly coming up with great art, great inventions. Great idea. Yeah, good point.
So I guess I wonder about that. So when we talk about we give someone a basic income, we can't give them 10,000, $1,000 a month, can we?
Why not? Why
Yeah,
not give them
sure
a
you
million?
can.
Well, okay, that's earned income credit today. Anybody that gets into taxation and you actually understand taxes, I do taxes, I've done it for many years. You see somebody gets $15,000 a year, they walk in, they have 2 or 3 children, they walk out, they get $8,000 to $10,000 earned income credit at one job. Here's their basic income. They're there the next year, they're there the next year. I've seen them now for 20 years, these same people coming. And now they're taking their grandkids and they're putting on these tax returns. It is basic income at that level you're talking about, and the level that Flip's talking about is the other one. That's at 100,000. We're seeing that huge disparities. So I think what you guys are talking about, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to be the moderator here. But I have this question because I see the merits of, hey, it would be nice to see people, instead of having 3 jobs, to have some way of having some way to take care of themselves and be able to live life in a better way.
Well, the reason they have the 3 jobs has been through the inflation of the central bank. That's constantly.
So we need to destroy the system.
Absolutely. Yeah. Down with that. Absolutely. Get rid of all the government, all taxes, for sure. But here's one question. If you gave everyone in the world $1 million a month basic income, you don't think there's going to be any repercussions in the economy?
I'm talking about $1,000 a month. And so they have 23,000 a year. That's
So 1,000
basic.
doesn't have any
They don't
effect,
have
but
enough
$1
money
million
to do
does.
anything but raise their kids.
Yeah. Okay, let's open this up a little bit outside. Obviously, question.
Yeah, what I'd love to see you all talk about, I see the merits of universal basic income in terms of liberating and really empowering us to a more enlightened society on one level. To me, it definitely has merit. What I'm concerned about is that it does become a backdoor to a feudalist kind of oligarchical system on steroids, in the sense that I don't understand what happens to property values. And because at that point, what would prevent people from taking that much more leverage? Wouldn't those who have capital buy up all the real estate that exists? Would you have to put restrictions on who can own what private property? Wouldn't rents double and triple? And would we be back in a similar situation? And so I'd love to hear what you have to say about that.
Well, I think that's sort of the point of the repercussions of just printing up the money. You say $1,000 isn't going to affect it. It does. It will absolutely affect everything. In fact, the price of everything will just go up. And so that's what inflation does, and you can say that didn't happen in the last 10, 15 years. It really did. Look at the cost of a school education, and no one should even bother going to college anyway, it's a complete waste of time. But if they do, it's like hundreds of thousands of dollars now. There's been massive inflation. You look at some of the prices of houses now. You're talking $250 million for houses. There's been absolutely massive inflation. And that's what happens.
It's not because of that 3.7 trillion that the Fed printed. What they did was, it's all in the reserve system of the banks. It never made it into the real economy. So all they did was swap. The banks had bonds, they swapped the bonds for dollars, or for reserves, basically. So the banks can't do anything with it, but lend it to other banks. They can't lend it into the real economy, and that's the reason it didn't affect the economy. There has been, in fact, inflation in things like housing, and that's because that's where all the speculative money is going, because there's no place else to put it.
That's what inflation does, yeah.
But it's not because there's more money in the system. There's not more money in the system.
There's a lot more money.
But it's all, as you're saying, it's all just moving between banks.
No, it's not just that 3.7 trillion, whatever you're talking about. They inflate the money supply every year by, it's around 10% per year right now.
You know, these social engineers come up with a new cockamamie idea every once in a while. This idea would probably go into the dustbin of history. I don't know what the next one will be, but it's always, we have to do something with all of those other people out there. We have to save them, and we'll get the money some way. Okay, we'll either steal it by taxing or steal it by inflation. It's crazy. It's all about the government will solve all of this. And this is the latest scheme for the government to kiss everything and make it better. It's going to destroy civilization in the long run.
Do you think that Doug and myself really want to hurt people, that want to see people poor? Do you think that's really our objective here? Because I'll tell you, our objective is to use our knowledge of economics.
I think you're working on the wrong economic model.
Well, I disagree, and I have all of history to prove. Like the fact that you don't even know how inflation works is unbelievable. If you inflate the currency, it destroys the value of the currency, and that impoverishes all the poor people. The people who have assets, and that's what the people at the houses here in Aspen, they just continue to get richer and richer. So you're talking about that disparity. That's caused by inflation. So when you cause it with even more inflation, you just destroy everything. Just look at all, communist sort of societies, right? You didn't even respond to that. Why is Venezuela not doing that well? It's redistributing everything, it's free electricity. Why is it not doing well?
Largely because we regulated our existence.
We regulated?
Not regulated, largely because we threatened them. Well, I don't know.
We
did. They were doing quite well in 2000 when they went. The economy collapsed in 2000.
Venezuela's problems are crony capitalism. When you replace everybody who's working there, that's what happened in Venezuela. It wasn't just inflation. They had a well-working system that they basically
it wasn't just inflation.
Completely tore out from inside out, and then they had no reserve capital. Nothing works efficiently. You need efficiency.
But these are places that try to give people the basic needs, right? That was the whole Chavez sort of thing. And your whole thing is that we regulated them. I didn't do anything.
Sorry, I shouldn't use the word.
Okay, so the U.S. government did.
So
you're saying I was in Venezuela about a year ago. It was already pretty bad, and I did not see any. I went there with an open mind. I did not see anything that really showed that they were being hurt by the U.S. government that much. And believe me, I hate the U.S. government more than anyone else in the world. So if I could find any reason, I would have just lambasted them. But it was really the Venezuelan government with their communism, which destroys the incentive for people who want to work, which is essentially the same as this universal basic income. It actually destroys incentive to work. And when that happens, you don't have anyone who wants to be more productive because they're like, well, I'm going to get the money anyway, he's going to get the money anyway. It becomes they all destroy themselves, and essentially it works against human nature. So to go back to my point earlier, the whole reason that I'm really adamant that this is a bad idea is because if you do this, you will hurt so many people, like millions or billions of people. It'll be turned into Venezuela, turn into Cuba, and people will be just basically trying to find animals in the streets to eat.
Okay, so let's talk about human nature for a minute, because I think it's human nature to strive for more, right? I mean, like, if you're provided for in some meager way, it isn't really human nature to stay at that level. So, I mean, we already have things like food stamps. We have programs that provide for people on a basic level. So why are we afraid of doing that with that universal basic income?
You know why the zoo says don't feed the animals? Because they don't feed the bears. You ever see the signs? Don't feed the bears. Because then they get dependent, and they're like, well, why should I go hunt for food? I can just come over here, right? I can rip apart.
Like, for instance, my father's a truck driver, and you know, I work in technology, and he asks me a lot, like, you know, when's it going to happen? Like, when is he going to lose his job, or when is it just not going to become a thing to drive a truck anymore?
5 to 10 years?
Right, and that's what I tell him, and maybe even sooner.
Tell them that's a good thing, because everything gets sorry for interrupting, but remember when they were arguing about the cotton gin? We can't have the technology, the robots pick cotton. We can't free the slaves because who's going to pick the cotton? When technology comes and takes over our jobs, we just go do other jobs that robots can't do.
Absolutely.
There's an absolute positive idea there, and that is that, yes, there will be additional jobs, very creative jobs that will become available. But on the other hand, there are, for example, digital autonomous organizations which will have no employees, will simply do a great job of providing at the right cost the goods and services that I think we all want. So for example, Uber doesn't need any employees. The next step for Uber, or Uber-like businesses, is to disintermediate the employee base and to get rid of everyone who works at Uber in a situation where software is the business.
Right.
Now, the bottom line for that is that since you don't need any drivers running Uber, how do you tidy them over into being creative in other ways? Perhaps becoming programmers and contributing to open source for other companies to be creative. Just like this entire environment here that we're talking about in Bitcoin, those fundamentals of blockchain are going to be exploited, and there will be jobs created in that regard. And people who contribute code will get tokens that will give them income over and above the basic universal income. And just to call the bear what the bear is, yes, we choose not to give basic income with no restrictions on how to spend it because we compensate for it by providing welfare at the other end. It's not like we're creating new money to pay for this. We're just recategorizing the money into you can spend it any way you want. You have the liberty to do whatever you want with it. You don't have to do what we tell you to do with that money. And on top of that, you can get the most productive job, train yourself, give yourself the opportunity, and become, you know, the next token holder of the energy company that will dominate energy distribution that has no employees.
It doesn't seem to bother anybody that this is all talk about social engineering, where really smart people figure out what all you chimpanzees get to do. But it's worse than that. Don't call them social engineers, call them busybodies. They want to stick their noses into everybody's business and say, this is better for you, we'll do it my way.
There's just here's your basic income, do with it what you want, and live your life the way you want.
Where does the money come? Where's the capital come from?
From the same place that you're now paying welfare.
So we are rebuilding Puerto Rico, are we not?
Just really quickly,
That was
just
one. I mean, we just want to make sure
without increasing the amount.
Oh, I didn't say about the amount.
Oh, well, interesting.
Probably the amount would go up because we get rid of the government.
Just like with a natural disaster in Puerto Rico, where I don't know how many billions of dollars were lost through no fault of the residents whatsoever. We are experiencing a liquidation of intellectual and experiential capital that is an equivalent, if unseen, catastrophe. And we need to help the people that are affected by this.
So we're collapsing helping Puerto Rico with UBI?
I'm saying that technology has presented opportunities as well as crises. Like automation.
Technology didn't cause the crisis and the calamity in Puerto Rico. I'm not sure where you collapsed.
I'm saying through no fault. Like we don't blame Puerto Ricans for living in for being hit by a hurricane.
Well, you kind of should in a little ways. They decided to live there and the hurricane's over.
You know, the fact is there are more jobs that go unfilled. The fact is there are more jobs. I have 14 years experience as a recruiter before I got into what I'm doing now. There are more jobs every year that go unfilled because there's a lack of qualified and motivated workforce in this country. There are more skilled jobs, 5 million, I think, right now, that companies can't fill. Because the workforce either isn't qualified or isn't
Do you
motivated.
think my 62-year-old father is going to learn how to code in?
No. And that's a different conversation, but you're
Is
talking
it
about
definitely
Puerto Rico.
something, for sure.
I mean, you know, but
Is that a bad thing that he has to?
I'm saying he earns enough to pay for his farm right now, okay? Like, he earns that because he's a truck driver. He has no other opportunity to earn that much money, you know, for the rest of his life. And when he loses his job, he will lose his farm. And I think you can see that repeated.
Yeah, no, you guys, I mean, this is just a comment on airplane pilots. There is a theoretical resistance on the part of us who fly. And we don't like the idea, theoretically, of there being no pilot flying the plane.
Right.
That, of course, is going to happen. The plane will fly without a pilot.
Right.
And they'll probably put somebody in the cockpit for $12 an hour to make it look like there's somebody flying that airplane. Just like the tugboats and the ships and the railroads and the Uber cars and the transportation and the trucking and everything else that is going to be decimated in terms of those kinds of menial jobs being available. Now we will, if we leave the system alone, many of those, like the Ohio coal miners, which seem to be highlighted as an example, they will all be without jobs and welfare will be provided to them because that's the way the system works, and that system sucks. First and foremost, when you give welfare to somebody, you demean them. If you give them income with they can choose to burn it if they want to. They can choose to use it for their education. They can do whatever they want with it, no restrictions. That puts a different form of liberty and behavioral characteristics on the people who receive it. You give them food stamps, you're locking them into jail. You give them universal basic income, you're giving them freedom.
You're just rebranding
How
the
is it
same
different?
thing.
It is not the same thing, because if you control what you can spend that money on, and I'm telling you what to do, that's a different bureaucracy than the
People
one that
put any
says,
food stamps, they sell that for cash and they spend it on whatever they want.
they can do that.
But I'm just saying, you're just rebranding it, it's the exact same thing.
The
Welfare is
problem-
welfare, giving for nothing, just.
No.
because you're-
It's a form of saying that technology is going to improve all our lives. Technology is going to make the millennials not lament the fact that they don't really want that kind of job because it sucks. Okay?
But then generations have to work those shitty jobs.
If you like the current system, if you like the way that works, fine. Don't be part of the movement that tries to instill universal basic income. I'm going to tell you one thing that I don't know shit. All I can tell you is that from my standpoint, from what I've researched, from what I do know, universal basic income is inevitable.
Yeah,
It's just the way it will be done.
If it
It's
is,
not
it'll
inevitable.
be gone within
So,
2 years.
but
For this-
then shouldn't it be ushered in as a response, not as a proactive reasoning? If you say it's inevitable.
For example,
it'll just
Hawaii
come.
has already legislatively passed universal basic income.
That doesn't mean it's.
Finland does.
Everybody in Hawaii.
India will.
Not now.
Well,
Not now.
Yeah, people
But the fact of the matter is that welfare isn't something we can ignore. It's there already. The food stamps are there already. Anyone who loses their job for an extended period of time and is without ability to pay, if you're a coal miner in whatever decimated industry, do you think that they just live on zero? Or do you think somebody gives them something every month?
But just because that's wrong doesn't mean you need to do another wrong.
Well, no.
Now the other
All
side.
I would say is universal basic income is being presented as an alternative. To all of us, it behooves to come up with an even better alternative because the shit's going to hit the fan anyway. There is no chance that it isn't. It is going to hit the fan. And we
Get rid of immigration because everyone's going to show up at the door.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm gonna have to cut this up, we're running out of time here. I think we've had a lively discussion, I think we can say that. How about we give a hand to everybody here on the panel?